Chapter 57, Everyone's Hero. During the Roaring Twenties, America fell in love with organized sports. Working hours were changing and more Americans had leisure time. They could go to ballparks or listen to games on the radio. Red Barber was now one of their favorite sportscasters. They could also play sports themselves. When the Great War ended, there were very few tennis courts or golf courses in the nation. Some states didn't have any at all. Those sports were mainly played by rich folks. By the end of the 20s, golf courses and tennis courts were popping up everywhere. Americans were hard at play. Sports stars became American heroes. One, George Herman Ruth, didn't look like a hero. His body was shaped like a barrel with a spindly leg sticking out of its bottom. His face wasn't much to look at either. In the middle was a smashed-in nose. But none of that mattered because Ruth, who was known as the Babe, turned beautiful when he stepped onto a baseball field. He was the most famous ball player of all time. He had an awful childhood. He wasn't an orphan, as some books say, but his parents, who ran a tavern, didn't care much for him. So he spent most of his time on the streets of Baltimore, got in trouble, and at age 8 was sent to a Catholic boys' home where he played a lot of baseball. He was tough, he had to be, but not bitter or angry. Actually, he was funny and friendly and had all the instincts of a natural ham actor. He loved playing baseball, he broke all of its records, and he was always himself, which means no one could predict what he would do or say next. The crowds adored him. Ruth was a lefty, a southpaw, and he started out as a pitcher in 1914 with the Boston Red Sox. He was sensational, but he could also hit harder and farther than anyone. So Boston had him pitch some days and sometimes had him play first base. In 1918, he was about the best left-handed pitcher in the game, and that year he also led the American League in home runs. But Boston needed money, so they traded him to the New York Yankees. The Yankees put him in the outfield. Pitchers play only every 3 or 4 days. An outfielder plays every day. The Yankees were counting on Babe Ruth's hitting. Were they ever right? Before Ruth, baseball had been a low-scoring game. Pitchers were the stars, and batters did a lot of bunting and base stealing. Ruth made it a hitter's game. The all-time home run record set in 1884 was 27 home runs in one season. In 1920, Ruth hit 54 home runs. People came to the ballpark just to see those homers. Other ball players began holding the bat the way he did and swinging with all their might. Scores began going up. High-scoring games are a lot more exciting than pitchers' duels. The fans went wild. Baseball teams agreed to switch to a lively ball that went farther than the ball they had been using. The game got really exciting. In 1921, Babe Ruth hit 59 home runs and scored a total of 177 runs. Yankee baseball attendance doubled. In 1923, the New York Yankees built Big, Beautiful Yankee Stadium. They used the money that came from increased attendance. It was called the house that Ruth built. Black socks. Babe Ruth was a godsend for a national game deep in scandal. In 1990, members of the Chicago White Sox, forever known as the Black Sox, took money from gamblers and lost the World Series on purpose. Only a larger-than-life figure like Ruth could distract the millions of baseball fans from the ugly scandal and restore the game's innocence. Ruth, with his prodigious hitting, flamboyant behavior, and childlike enthusiasm, is just what the country needed. Those who couldn't get to Yankee Stadium could still enjoy the game. The first radio station, KDKA in Pittsburgh, began broadcasting in October 1920. 4 years later, there were 576 licensed stations and 5 million radio sets in use. People in Kansas could hear the Yankees play baseball. Radio announcers went to the ball games and described what was happening, play by play. At home, families clustered around their wood-covered radio set, and if the static wasn't too bad, listened for the swat of Babe Ruth's bat. He was trying to beat his own home run record. But when a reporter asked, "Which one was that, Babe?" the slugger was cool. "I'll hit 'em, you count 'em," he said. In 1927, the Babe hit 60 home runs. That record stood for 34 years until 1961 when Roger Maris hit 61. There were 154 games in the 1927 season and 162 games in 1961. It took 13 more years for someone to top his career home run total, 714 of them. Atlanta Brave Hank Aaron did that. Babe did everything in a big way, including eating and drinking. So when he got sick with fever and stomach cramps, reporters said it was because he ate 12 hot dogs and drank 8 bottles of soda pop. That wasn't true. He ate like that regularly. But this time he was really sick. It was called the bellyache heard around the world. In 1935, Babe Ruth was fat from eating too much. He was 40 years old. Still, there was no stopping him. He was now playing for the Boston Braves, and in his last professional game, hit 3 home runs. His final home run was said to be the longest ever hit in Forbes Field. The other Babe. When Mildred Didrikson was growing up in Beaumont, Texas, she played baseball with the neighborhood boys. When she began hitting homers the boys couldn't catch, they gave her a nickname. What do you think it was? Why, Babe, of course. When it came to athletics, Babe Didrikson seemed to do it all. She was an All-American basketball player. She was a softball star and pitched in baseball exhibition games against major league teams. She competed in swimming and diving events and played competitive tennis. She did some boxing. She became a national heroine when she earned 3 medals in track and field at the 1932 Olympic Games at Los Angeles, California. But she is best known as one of America's outstanding women golfers. Once she won 17 golf tournaments in a row. Babe became Babe Didrikson Zaharias in 1938 when she married wrestler George Zaharias. She has been called the outstanding woman athlete of the first half of the 20th century. No American woman before or since has been champion in so many sports.